What is going on, everyone? Welcome to episode 232 of Littleroot Lessons. I'm Ro, and I'm here joined by the Elden Lord Jay. Mr. Elden Lord, how are you?
I'm living life, baby. It's everything's exciting. We got worlds coming up, so
Yeah,
lots of fun to look at.
I know you say it's fun, and it will be fun, but at the same time, it's like Regulation H has been such a breath of fresh air. Spent almost 2 hours on it last week just talking about Pokemon rankings that already, some of them look bad, some of them look amazing. That's just what happens. And then to go back to Reg G and have to discuss that, I'm like, ugh, like, can we just be done with this? Like,
Yeah,
yeah, like if
it
everyone at Worlds could just gentleman Reg H, that would be amazing.
it would be a fun time. I think that would be really funny. I was telling Angelo before we started the episode, I've been like completely checked out of Pokemon lately, so the Reg G to Reg H throwback doesn't, I guess, throw me off that much, but not as much as other people, but we do have to look back at some of these high-powered restricted Pokemon now, which can make a grown man cry. So
Yes, and yeah. So with that being said, like we're just going to talk restricteds. We're going to go through some of the top restricteds, the ones that you're going to see being played by the best of the best this weekend, well, this upcoming weekend in Hawaii, and we're going to just go and say why we think that they can win and why we think that they can't. Um, to do so, we are going to be using a where are you? We're going to be using the team search function on LabMouse. You can go to this find teams here, search a Pokemon, and then from there it'll pull up every team within this specific time period. Uh, what's been like that it's been on, along with information such as the placement, the tournament, so on and so forth. So I think we have to start with what I think we can all say is the best of the best, and that is, and we're also going to sort it by like the teams that have been winning. Calyrex Shadow.
yeah, get
So
your dollar bills ready. We're talking about DLC Pokemon.
we're talking, yeah. This episode, after last episode, we're like, oh yeah, this is going to be so easy. Strictly $90 funny button Pokemon, and that is exactly what Calyrex Shadow is. We again, we know what it does. It has the Grimnay, has Astral Barrage. It's the fastest Pokemon in the format. It's stupid. But Jay, why is it going to win Worlds?
Um, I think just funny button. Like I don't think that there's really much else to say about Cali Shadow and why it can win worlds. You have nasty plot with you get your two stages of special attack very very quickly. It doesn't take as much investment to actually get this thing set up. It's one turn and go. Sometimes it's zero turns and go. Just click Astral Barrage, take a KO, take two, and this game can be completely over very quickly. Um, it obviously has some issues in its frailty, and its typing leaves a lot to be asked for, considering it's four times weak to both Ghost and Dark. Makes that mirror match very difficult, but you can't deny that it has the ability to just power through teams. And in the mirror match, sometimes like teams will take like that Terra Normal option and really run with it.
Yeah. I think one of the other things you're seeing on the screen, it also is a Pokemon that just works best with the best Pokemon in the format. Some of the top teams you've seen here, like the team that Alessio Ferreira 6-1 to win the Chaos League X Spear Pillar event number 3. This is just the best Fire Water Grass ever, to be quite honest. And then two of the best support Pokemon in Tornadus and Clefairy. This 6 here, I can actually pull this up. So this 6, this is the shows the Terra Normal that Jay was just mentioning. It does have Expanding Force, which is a bit of weird tech without the Indeedee, but then like the rest of the Pokemon are just the best Pokemon, some of the best Pokemon in the game, and they just do an amazing job at supporting the Calyrex. I think one of the things, reasons why it could lose is because this is the Pokemon that everyone is going to have a game plan into. Um, you just need to know how to beat Calyrex Shadow, and if you're showing up to the tournament with a bad CSR matchup, then you're well. I hope that your matchup luck is absolutely off the charts.
Yeah, you're just playing matchup roulette at that point. I mean, it's
Not even
probably
matchup
gonna
roulette.
have
You're
thirty
praying.
five percent usage, more than likely on date one is my imagine like what my brain is telling me just based on like previous regionals. Given that it is worlds, we might see a smaller sample size of that, but expect this to probably be number one, number two usage on day number one, and expect to see a lot of it during this upcoming worlds.
Yeah. Say the next one we can talk about is its brother Calyrex Ice. Again, another $90 funny button move. Again, break out mom and dad's credit cards if you want to be doing well in this tournament. Um, I think the best part with Calyrex Ice is that it's probably the closest we get to playing balance in the single restricted format. There's so
Yeah.
much offense. Everything is so heavily centralized around your restricted. You really can't play the slow positional game that a balance team like let it. People have described balance as just like letting you and your opponent play Pokemon, and in this single restricted format, we have a ton of Pokemon that are just unfair that don't want your opponent to play Pokemon. Um, this is the closest you can get to it because you have the water fire grass pieces that are always great. You have built-in speed control with Trick Room on the Calyrex Ice, but at the same time, it's very unfair because if it gets in position in Trick Room with some chipped Pokemon on the other side, its Glacial Lances just snowball the game.
Yeah, and you just pair it with like so many bulky Pokemon next to it. You put Rillaboom, you put Raging Bolt, you put Incineroar. Pelipper on these teams even has quite a bit of bulk on them. So Amoonguss as well. So like you're able to just kind of pack these bulky Pokemon next to it and just say, I'm gonna outlive you. I'm gonna get into the mode that I want, whether it be Trick Room. I know Wait, not. I don't think any of these top teams have a tailwind mode more than likely, but some of these Calyrex Ice teams, similar to like how we saw Ursaluna Blood Moon play, how they have this kind of dual mode type thing where they can play in or out of Trick Room, maybe even throw in a tailwind mode on top of that. You can even go and say, I'm going to go faster than you and start hitting you with Glacial Lances.
Yeah.
Clear Amulet was fantastic for this Pokemon. We used to see. I do miss the weakness policy stuff that we had back in the day. That
Yeah,
was a lot of fun.
weakness Paul. Yeah, I ran that in. I think it was like Series 8 with Mimikyu, and you would just the weakness policy Shadow Sneak go +2, and you also had Dynamax, and you would just be so bulky and just hit so hard.
Yeah, I loved it with Rangaroo because you would be able to just instruct Glacial Lance after a brutal swing.
Yep.
You take focus sashes that way, and then you start clicking Glacial Lance, and it's like, all right, man, this game is over on turn three. So what
Yeah.
am I gonna do?
And I think like what Jay just said there, that goes like these two Pokemon. We're going to get into a few others. They're just unfair Pokemon. Not in the fact that you're cheating using them, like you're not going to get DQ'd for using the Calyrex, but at the beginning of this format, Dr. Aaron Trailer shared a document with a few other New England players. It was like his testing document, or at least his notes on each restricted. And one of the ratings he gave each one was fairness. And we asked him, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, it feels really unfair taking 2 KOs with the Glacial Lance, get it going +2, and then clicking Glacial Lance again and picking up the next two Pokemon because those 2 KOs pretty much gave you a Swords Dance while you were at it. And that's like part of it. I think that the other nice thing you see this here, Wesley Liam winning this World's 2024 practice, and then WBVG winning the Himmy Burton Glizzy Tour number 47. Both of these teams here definitely lean hard Trick Room. The apes on these teams are Scarf, Final Gambit. You have a lot of utility with Smeargles. They can spore, they can redirect. Um, and then you also have the secondary redirector, whether it's the Indeedee female or the Electabuzz, and this is just really the good hard trick room teams that you'll see in the format. That like these are two harder trick room teams that will I could see doing well.
Mhm.
Um, I think I think the
I,
reason why you go Jay.
I was gonna say I really like the Golden Go versions of these teams as well. We see it in the Oreo practice VGC tour. Shout out Oreos because they paid my bills. And shout out, and also in the Mouse Tour Weekly, we see this Golden Go version of the team, which Calyrex Ice struggles quite a bit with some Zenta teams, and having like a really great option defensively into Zamazenta is awesome. Um, so, you know, like Golden Goat doesn't lean as hard Trick Room as something like an Ursaluna Blood Moon, Smeargle, and Frigoraph with, your Final Gambit Ape does, but, Golden Go has that unique speed tier we were talking about last week that allows it to kind of work both in and out in the same way that Cali Ice does. So
Yeah. So Jay, why do you think Calyrex Ice like why do you think Calyrex Ice will not win Worlds? Like what's the big weakness that you see with the Pokemon?
I think that it's kind of just a weakness in balanced teams, generally speaking. Is that if you lose a piece early on, if you make an aggressive switch in that gets punished, you end up in a really tough spot. I know we saw it in Stockholm with Marco Fiero. Um, he switched in his Raging Bolt, lost it to a Draco Meteor, and from there the game was kind of just slowly ending. Um, it's it's just one of those, it's kind of just the issue with balanced teams, generally speaking. I think that if we see something maybe more like Trung Gwen's team in the Sky Pillar VGC tournament over here, where it has like this balance mode, but with like a really strong offensive core of like Ogerpon Cornerstone, Rillaboom, and Urshifu Rapid Strike, like that could be something that we really, see, or something like Patrick Connor's team from NAIC as well.
Yeah, I mean, I
Um,
think this is yeah up here. This is or like these two teams. It's pretty
yeah.
much like Connor's team as well, and I definitely agree with you. It's like losing something on switching, like a move that you thought would be a safe. I can't talk. Safe switch. There we go. And losing that piece that could really put you behind. I also think it's like you do want to be in Trick Room. So against some of these other teams, specifically Caloric Shadow and the next restricted we're going to talk about in Maridon, you can get outpaced, and these Pokemon have the ability to put out so much damage where not only are you potentially getting outpaced speed wise if you can't get that Trick Room up safely, but you're also like against a Pokemon like Maridon, or once the CSR gets a nasty plot boost up, there isn't really a safe switch,
Mhm.
and that could really blow it up. Now,
And also, just before we get to Maridon,
sure.
because Maridon counters his Pokemon specifically, but Amoonguss is really tough for
Mm,
Calyrex Ice. It has that positive matchup in terms of Glacial Lance hitting it super effectively, but the concept that you can switch a Moongus in or have it in the back as like your kind of one of one type Calyrex Ice matchup handler is really great for Moongus and not for Calyrex Ice. Especially, we've seen a lot more of a lean towards like Terra Fire, Terra Water, even to stop Will-O-Wisp and just Chi-Yu attacks or Ogerpon Hearthflame Ivy Cudgels. Um, it's it becomes tough when you just have one Pokemon slot taken up to kind of work as a counter against Calyrex Ice. So I think we'll see probably a move back towards Terra Grass on the Cali Ices going into Worlds here, but Amoonguss is definitely a tough issue for that.
Yeah, and again, like the other thing with moving, like I think you said it, Calyrex kind of wants to be Terra Fire, Terra Water, and Terra Grass. Terra Fire, of course, to stop the Will-O-Wisp. Terra Grass to deal with the Amoonguss issue, and Terra Water is just a significantly better defensive typing. Compared to the other two, it's mono water is always amazing. The issue you run into specifically with these Miraidon teams that we're getting into, Miraidon realized having a really strong fire type on this team, like to go with the Miraidon, really good. You're seeing a lot of the teams kind of look relatively similar. You're seeing a form of speed control, whether like a fairy type prankster speed control mon. A lot of these top teams here, it's the Whimsicott. And the Whimsicott on these teams usually is also running light screen. But even down here, you have Aldrich, good friend of mine, Aldrich John, using a Thunder Wave Grimmsnarl, going heavier on the screens, heavier on the bulk, and just a lot of status based disruption that way. And then pretty much all these teams have fire types that are just really, really powerful. Fire Pawn is an unbelievable Pokemon with Miraidon, especially on Semaphore's team for the Devil's Den. That when they won that, having Chiyu with Miraidon and Lando I is just so much special damage. Um, Even again, Aldrich's team using a Pokemon like Entei, which is a favorite of Jay's, and something that I still am not allowed to live down. Putting
You're
it in
not.
B tier. Nope. Literally the worst. It's like that Always Sunny thing. It's like I'm like it's a B tier mon, and it's like Entei wins the next regional champion.
Yeah. Who would have thought that Sacred Fire and Terra Normal E-Speed combined on the same, core Pokemon is going to be really good.
you know,
Um,
apparently not me.
it also
Um,
has like really great stats. My favorite Entei set still is Choice Specs Eruption and Sun with Whimsicott. So much fun. The amount of times I cracked that out in Draft League, just like I ran like an Entei, Whimsicott, Galarian Moltres team, and just like there was 2 times that I ran Choice Specs Eruption Entei, and both times I won my matches in like 3 turns. It was like it's like what are you doing against that?
yeah,
Inner Focus, great ability by the way.
yeah. But like I'd say in general, and maybe we can talk about not just the teams itself, but why Miraidon's so good.
Yeah,
It's the stats are crazy. The ability to set a terrain, to get that control, to stop sleep, to boost your own electric type moves, and also just get a special attack bonus on top of it is nutty. And while Terra Electric to add another multiplier on top of it with the choice specs was very popular early on in the meta, we've seen this switch to Terra Fairy with Dazzling Gleam, and that's just gives it a better way to take out Pokemon like Raging Bolt and also do better in the mirror, because a lot of these teams you're seeing in the mirror and some of the CSR and Calyrex Ice teams that we saw, some of them can throw on a Pokemon like Iron Hands to really shore up the matchup into Miraidon. So the Terra Fairy Dazzling Gleam really helps. In general, for Miraidon teams, I'd say you have the Miraidon, like they kind of fit in the same mold. You have a Miraidon, you have a Giraffe, you have an Iron Hands, you have a Fire type, you have some sort of Broken Bear Pokemon, and you have a Prankster Fairy that has screens and a speed control move. The slots are generally set. It's just that at this point, it's so good on what you can do with them, and of course you can change the slots up. The fire type on a few of these seems to actually been Volcarona. That's what I was using at the locals I played in last week. Shout out to Stefan Mott for giving me that team and suggesting Volcarona with the Terra Fairy Miraidon, and pretty much you're able to just use very high power Pokemon to get yourself in positions to take KOs whether your opponent resists or not.
you've been talking a lot about how Whimsicott's running screens. Are they still running Encore by any
Yes, so
chance?
we can actually pull this up.
I'm
This
guessing
right
it's
here.
probably just Drop Protect run Encore, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so this right here, this is this team. This is Gengar Mad's team from Wide League number 57. And yeah, this is pretty much your standard ish Miraidon team with the Terra Fairy. the at least the standard Whimsicott variant, Moonblast Encore, Light Screen, and Tailwind. Uh, the Light Screen really, really, really helps into Calyrex Shadow, which if
Mhm.
we want to talk about why this wins, and not to spoil like what we'll get to it at the end of the video, but I'm huge on Miraidon. Why it's going to win is there's nothing that it's resists don't matter. It's your fuck your damage Calcmon, and you're going to literally blow everything up. Why is it going to lose? It's slower than CSR,
I
which
also feel like
kind of
its
sucks.
game plan is pretty linear for the most part too. Like Miraidon teams work very similar to how like Psy Spam teams work. How there's kind of we're running a line, we're gonna get Trick Room up, we're gonna click our buttons. With Miraidon, it's like I'm gonna click Electro Drift or Volt Switch out of here. Turn one, get something else in, bring my Miraidon in later, start clicking strong spread moves to beat you. Um,
I think it's slightly different than a Psy Spam team because it's. I think the thing is with Psy Spam is that there's a lot of easier switch-ins. Um, again, it's like there's if you're neutral and the Miraidon's set up, it's in terrain and everything, you're going down.
yeah,
But speaking of terrain, this Pokemon called Rillaboom exists, and it's super splashable on a lot of teams.
and,
And
and the teams that don't carry Rillaboom, a lot of them carry Indeedee.
yeah,
Like
uh,
there's a lot of terrain around, but
it,
having terrain that can shut down Spore and Sleep Stuff is really good too.
it is. But like I will say, losing your terrain because a lot of it, it's not even just the electric type multiplier, but you're also losing the Hadron engine multiplier. Like there were when I was one of my matches last weekend. I was up against a Groudon player, and they switched in their Raging Bolt, and I got they had their Raging Bolt in, and I was like, okay, I can get the Raging Bolt on a Draco, um, and I ended up missing the KO because they switched in their Rillaboom, and I lost my terrain, and I got a low roll, and the Raging Bolt was able to live by like 3 HP.
Yeah,
So losing your terrain is just very annoying, and it does dampen the damage output. It's why you're seeing these teams run Fire Pawn again. Like Mario's team here has both Talonflame, Heart Flame, and Genpao. This team screams, "I'm going to kill every Rillaboom. Like, do not bring that Pokemon against me. I will like delete it from existence. I half of my team is here to do so."
yeah, and
And
Iron Hands as well. Like
yeah,
Rillaboom does not love seeing Iron Hands either. That Pokemon just has the defensive bulk to live anything that Rillaboom wants to chuck at it. So
yeah. So that would be the reason why though. Like, is losing its terrain? It's the fact that everyone has Rillaboom, and everyone's making a plan with Rillaboom into it. I'd say that the next group of Pokemon we're going to get into, I think that the Calyrex and Miraidon are on a tier of their own, and the next group we're going to get into, they can win, but they're going to need a little help. The first one is the old VGC classic Kyogre.
yeah, this Pokemon's really weird at the moment. Like I don't know kind of where the metaphor it has gone. I still believe that like Assault Vest is probably the one that you're looking towards for the most part. But Kyogre is just like a unique Pokemon with like its main benefit is that it gets Water Spout, but there's so much priority in this format that Water Spout is not all that amazing because you're going to take damage most of the time before you actually do damage.
Yeah,
And also, there's so many Pokemon with absurd speed tiers and weather changing abilities or moves that. And also, we were talking about Whimsicott with Light Screen as well. These Pokemon screens is kind of becoming a very popular archetype as well. There's a lot of ways to shut down Kyogre's water spout damage before it even has the chance to attack.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things it's just seems to expose with when you're like why do I think like why could Kyogre win? I think it's simply Tornogre, like Kyogre with Water Spout and Tailwind support and Rain, it still is insanely threatening. It's another one of those unfair, funny delete buttons. It's just a little more fair because the damage output is dependent on the Kyogre not taking any damage. Why is it not going to be that great? Well, your Calyrex, like you need to have speed control to outspeed Miraidon and Calyrex Shadow. If you don't have that speed control, you just lose.
Mm-hmm.
And like I think one of the other things is the fact that you have to Terra in front of the Miraidon, and even then, if you Terra and don't handle the terrain, one of the a cool thing. I mean, I was just talking about how um, I missed a KO on a Raging Bolt with a Draco because I lost my terrain. On the other end, I was up against a Kyogre team and it was a Tornogre lead. It was a Grim Miraidon lead for me. They clicked Tailwind and I just clicked T Wave Draco, and Draco with the terrain up just Oko's min bulk Kyogre.
That's
And
wild that they click Tailwind in front of Thunderwave Grimmsnarl. Like, what are you doing?
it's one of those things where it's like at that point you're already kind of pinned for that lead, and it's like, okay, well, I have to just hope that it misses, which it can,
At
like that
that
is
point,
the
just switching your Landorus or whatever,
yeah
like electric resist that you have, because if you don't have an electric resist, good luck, brother. You're gonna really struggle.
yeah and like really I think Kyogre's one of these mons where like the really good Kyogre players like
They use
I
Wo-Chien.
they don't you might see that, okay, like if your name is Marcos Perez, like Moxie Boosted, then sure. But like I know, like like the experienced Kyogre players know how to play around Miraidon. They know how to get that speed control. It's just one of those things where you need to really know the matchup. You have to have a lot of games into like that specific matchup to know how you can play around it. And again, it's one of those things where it's also a matchup where if a couple things go wrong in your plan, you can just lose it immediately. In general, though, like the teams are very strong. I do think certain mons like Overquill have stayed as an amazing way to take out the Calorexes. I think that is just a great addition to how the team can be ran, along with again the the Landorises as well. You gotta really. This is another team where you really have to have Rillaboom though, because you need the Rillaboom to help patch the Miraidon matchup.
I feel
At
like Kyogre teams have mostly been the same for like years now. You know, like you have Tornadus, Kyogre, Rillaboom, priority blocking in either Farigiraf or Serena for the most part, and then like your Urshifu Waters. It's like, um, it's just kind of funny how from Sword and Shield on we've had a similar core of Pokemon to run with it.
Yeah, because like honestly, you take Enrique's team here, replace the Goldango with just I don't know, like pretty. I wouldn't say like replace the Goldango here with something.
I don't even hate Goldango on these
Well,
teams.
I was gonna
Like,
say if you replace the Goldango with a Zapdos or something, like this is literally
yeah,
just a Series 8 team from Sword and Shield. Like
true.
that's they and I think that just goes on like another reason why it can win. It's Kyogre's VGC royalty. This Pokemon just wins. Except on the other end, on why it can't is everyone has any experienced VGC player has played against Kyogre, and the lines that worked against it in Gen 7 and Gen 6 are kind of the same lines that work against it in 2024.
And
So
nowadays, a lot of these teams, although like Rain is very popular, a lot of teams have some type of sun mode or some type of damage mitigation mode on them. So there's very easy ways to make your Pokemon be able to live those strong water spouts. And Kyogre definitely has become a little bit of a terra hog because you can either have tailwind or you can have priority blocking. There's no in between.
Hmm.
So you have to kind of pick one or the other, or you're gonna get did, you know. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not super high on Kyogre going into Worlds. I think the players are too experienced. They know what's going on, and they know what Kyogre's here to do, and they know how to stop it.
I have one of my close friends is bringing Kyogre to Worlds, and I believe in him very, very much. Um,
I believe in them.
yeah.
I don't.
Also,
I don't know if I
putting this on the
believe in
record,
him.
Chase, I'm sorry for hacking the absolute crap out of you last Sunday. It was
Oh my
bad.
gosh.
Oh no, it's
Angelo's he's leaking Tiki Chase's team. Oh my gosh.
no,
What?
no, different,
Other
different.
Chase. Other
Yeah, different
Chase.
Chase. Yeah, no, I don't think Tiki's going to Worlds.
Well, shout out Tiki. Also shout out other Chase.
Yeah, Chase, Rhode Island VGC, fucking love you, buddy. Zamazenta. So Zamazenta was like the Pokemon that we were like. Is Iron Defense Body Press is cool, but how cool can it actually be with all of these super unfair Pokemon? And then it started winning a ton of events, and that was awesome. And then it stopped.
But isn't it awesome when you don't have to click Iron Defense to get super strong body presses?
Yeah, no, it really is. So a lot of the players in the New England area were have like a lot of them were testing all different variants of Zamazenta, and just looking at the teams here, the main Pokemon that usually were ran with it almost always came with Chimpao and Rillaboom, and
Hmm.
then you had different flying types such as the Moltres, the Thundurus. Waterfoo always worked great there. Fluttermane was always a great pick as well. Like I've seen a lot of these teams are just different variations. And why can it win worlds? It's I think it's a better, even better balance piece than Cali Ice. You could do it works super well with a lot of different Pokemon. One of the great things it can do as well, not even having to press Iron Defense, but it can have Wide Guard, and you can use Wide Guard to lock down Terapagos, Calyrex Ice, Calyrex Shadow, the Degleams or discharges from Miraidon. Like that's the Water Spouts from Kyogre. Like that's super super useful. Um, to run on some of these teams. I believe like we can check here. Um, actually, no, this
I like putting Dragonite on Epom's team. You know, you have that Chanpao Dragonite mode, but then you also have Chanpao Zamazenta, Chanpao Rillaboom, um,
yeah,
Chanpao Urshifu. Um, Coaching Choice Scarf for Urshifu is really fun.
yeah,
That's a really cool option because you don't have to click Iron Defense, which this team does have the option to do. But instead, you can just click coaching, and then boom, you have +2 body press just like that.
yeah, and also that also just helps with your heavy slams as well.
Yep.
The Thunderous that is popping up on these teams, it's a really great tech as well. Eerie Impulse is unbelievable into both Miraidon and Calyrex Shadow. And it is a button that it's really really easy to click with the covert cloak. You pretty much are always going to get it off. Um, Again, testing. I played sets against a similar team to this six at my locals, and I was using CSR. And part of the issue I had was I really couldn't get my Calyrex going until the Thunderous was gone. And so Thunderous definitely helps the CSR matchup. But like that also leads to why I don't think this Pokemon can win. Um, when it comes down to it, Zamazenta's best button to press is body press, and you can't click body press into Calyrex. Like plain and simple. You have to have other mons to tech in. Again, the Thunderous is pretty much just there for that matchup. The Chien Pao really helps as well. But if you lose this Thunderous piece because you're a balanced team, um, then like your CSR or your Miraidon, they can just wipe the floor with you because your damage output isn't that great with this team compared to the others. Uh, Zamazenta is the only. out of all of the restricteds we'll talk about today, I like Zamazenta is like the best honest restricted. It's an honest Pokemon. It lets you and your opponent play Pokemon, unlike the others, and it kind of sucks being honest in a very dishonest format.
Yeah, I like the way that these teams have kind of developed too. You might want to close your ears when I say this, Monroe, but Thundurus is a better rain setter than Pelipper. At the end of the day, like
Yeah,
you,
ask Patrick Connor. Ask Patrick Connor. Go and do
listen,
that.
listen, right?
I will say this. I love Thunderous. I'm a huge Thunderous fan, and I'm very happy to see it find a spot on these teams.
It's got better stats. It has better ability. It has better move set. Like
The damage output isn't there, and that's
it's still probably better than. I mean, Pelipper gets Hurricane, which is the big benefit to it, is that it's able to hit a Mungus. But what's Thunder's typical fourth move?
it's
Thunder
usually
Wave.
so on
Thunder
this
Wave like
team,
taunt, right?
it's usually Thunder. Yeah, it's Thunderbolt, Rain Dance, and then you'll see like two of Eerie Impulse, Thunder Wave, and Taunt. Um, I think for this team specifically, having the speed control is really great. You want to have some speed control button on these teams to just get pace of play at your level. Um, the taunt, however, could be a little more useful. This, like again, the team that we showed, we do have the Rillaboom and we have the Terragrass Zamazenta. But another issue that Zamazenta has is it also really doesn't like seeing a Mungus. Mungus
Mm-hmm.
is able to resist its stabs. It's able to put it asleep, and if you're forcing that Terra to Terra Grass, and again, they have a really strong fire type in front, like fire type on their team. Looking at these Miraidon teams again, like you like I mean you wouldn't have a Mungus and on a Miraidon team, but like even some of like the Calyrex Shadow teams, like some of the faster paced ones that have Fire Pawn on them, like you don't want to go in Terra Grass and then get bonked by a critical hit like Ivy Cudgel.
Yeah,
It's
and like Chi-Yu being a thing is a big problem,
yeah.
especially when you have to manually set your rain. There's a lot of times where you'd probably prefer to click something like Eerie Impulse into whatever Pokemon's on the field, like Miraidon. So if you have to click Rain, you're not maybe getting as much benefit out of Thunderous as possible. You're also taking neutral damage from Electro Drift, which you really need to resist that to even have
Yeah,
an
neutral.
opportunity to survive.
Yeah, neutral damage means you're going down. And the other thing as well, the Terraghost Incineroar that has been everywhere. Most of the instances are going to be Terraghost with Will-O-Wisp. You have other Pokemon on the team, like to an extent, that's also why you'll see the versions with Moltres to be able to punish the Ghost types. But on a team like the top one up here, outside of you have the Flutter and you have the Chien-Pao, but a lot of if like the Chien-Pao's only running Sucker Punch, then again it's can't really hit it and it's getting threatened with a Will-O-Wisp, and that's like the other thing where sure you don't really care about the Intimidate because you're mostly using your defense stat. You do care about the Will-O-Wisp, and
Yeah.
if you have to run Terra Grass to get a better Amoonguss matchup and you can't get away from the Will-O-Wisp weakness, again, it's just too honest of a Pokemon. Like this is the honest Abe of restricted Pokemon, and we are in a Richard Nixon meta.
I think we maybe will see Zamazenta start shifting back towards the Pelipper teams.
Mm.
Um, Pelipper also doesn't have a very good Miraidon matchup at all.
No.
But the ability to kind of click Wide Guard in front of something like Calyrex Shadow Rider, Calyrex Ice is really great for it. Zamazenta's biggest problem is more than likely going to be Miraidon. I think that that's going to be the Pokemon. If the Zamazenta teams end up lining up into those teams, it's going to really struggle. And like we've been saying, Mungus is really difficult for it. I know I was trying to play Zamazenta early format and realized very quickly how much a Mungus is a problem for it.
Yeah.
Especially when a Mungus can like Terra Water, Terra. I don't know if they're running Terra Ghost right now, but like that's always something that Among Us could potentially do. I think Terra Water is like the best
Yeah.
version of it. And the other thing is like the fairy types in the format. They're 90% of the time paired with Incineroar.
Hmm.
And so then your body presses are still not even doing that much when you're set up, when you have coaching boosts, when you have iron defense boosts. It's tough. And my last point on Zamazenta on why it might not win is that we love it as a wide guard Pokemon, but we also really like it as an iron defense Pokemon.
Yeah.
Most of the time, you can't have both. And when you're running the wide guard sets, you're kind of
Your
left
damage is even.
sometimes clicking wide guard and not doing anything.
Yeah, you don't want your restricted to be your wide guard bot in a single restricted format. I will say, double restricted, it's going to go off even harder, because you actually can run it a little more supporty. It doesn't need to be the focal point of the team.
Yeah.
But on a metagame where it has to be the focal point, it did have its day in the sun. The people who are using Zamazenta, like during like late May, early June, before NAIC, before Montana won LA with the Caloric Shadow, when everyone was trying to bury the Ghost Horse, this was the Mon to use. And if you ask someone on May 26th, like, oh, which restricted do you think? They probably, like, Zamazenta would have definitely been up there for like a lot of people who have said it. Now I don't think you could really find anyone who is gung ho on Zamazenta.
Except if your name is Mikhail Kelch.
Yes.
Yeah, if Zamazenta wins, it's going to be by a player named Mikhail Kelch. It's just how it is. I'm sorry, any other Zamazenta players, you're not as good as him. Get over yourself.
Michael Zhang in shambles right now.
Michael Zhang also. If your name's not Michael or Mikhail or some variation of it, just don't use
Don't
Zamazenta. You're
don't.
not. It's not worth it. You're gonna get beat.
So Terapagos, I'm sad that this Pokemon kind of sucks now. I love the turtle.
Yeah.
It's such like a fun Pokemon. And we can talk about why it can win. I think it has two great sets in Calm Mind and Specs. Specs is a little better, I think, just for the format. Calm Mind might be something we see more in double restricted. You can run just good stuffs with it. You can see right here Magic Aura's team for the Gertie's Gaming Thursday night practice. Like, okay, you have Rock Pond, Hands, Flutterance, and Amoonguss. Sato VGC, Comfey isn't a good mom, but you have the Firewater Grass plus Torn.
Comfey is really cool on these like bulky balance teams though. Like I really enjoy the Comfey stuff, especially with like Terabagos, because you can go up and get your Terra Shell again.
Yeah, and looking at this team here, like this is an example of like that setup team. You also actually have a Swords Dance Urshifu, so this team was very interesting. Tail Room option, the Trick Room on Comfey, the Tailwind on Torn, and it's really with the leftovers Terapagos. You want to just make sure that you have the double fake out plus the floral healing from Comfey to always just make sure that Terra Shell is intact. Get like two or three Calm Mind boosts up, and then just go Stellar Terra, click Terra Starstorm, and just win. Um, you also have, let me see if we can grab a Specs variant here. Give me a second. No, actually, looking at a lot of the top variants right now, clicking
They're probably
through, it
mostly
does
Calm Mind,
seem
right?
like actually this would be no. It seems like a lot of them are just running the setup variant. The team that we
Yeah.
saw Aurelion solo win with the specs really seems to have fallen off, at least with these placements here. Um, going into like going into why we think it could win. Being a normal type is amazing. Into Calyrex Shadow, you have an amazing Calyrex Shadow matchup.
Yeah.
You can, depending on the variant, you can game the CIR matchup pretty well, and try to figure that portion out. and your ability to turn off terrain, turn off weather. Um, you're able to go and just disrupt the Miraidon damage output. Turn off the weather for Kyogre, which it desperately needs. Turn off the weather for Koraidon, which it desperately needs. Um, and once you are set up, Terra Starstorm is one of the best moves to click in the game. You literally cannot switch into it. It's always either neutral or super effective. And after two or three boosts, or if you're running it with like Specs Chi, you're just going to be able to blow through teams that do not have a way to switch in to it.
Yeah.
Um, why do you think it's going to not win Worlds, Jay?
So Terapagos has a couple of really weird things going on with it. First of all, while you can positively benefit yourself against certain matchups with terrain and weather, a lot of these teams have terrain on them. So you are incidentally turning off your own Rillaboom's grassy terrain, which is also your own healing. Um, Not being able to defensive Terra is also a really big negative. We're seeing a lot of Pokemon kind of go towards defensive Terra. And being stuck in normal type in a format dominated by Urshifu is really tough. Um, Finally, when you do terrestrialize, you lose your Terra Shell. You are Stellar Terra, and your Terra Starstorm become spread damage. For that first turn, it's going to hit like a truck. But after that, it's not going to be hitting as hard. And you're not going to have the damage mitigation that your Terra Shell provides for you. I think it's the very great Terapagos players are going to have a better time with it. Like, I wouldn't be surprised to see Aurelion Sola go and run back another great result with it. But those players who are like, I think this Pokemon is good, I'm going to pick it up for maybe not the first time, but, I'm not as, I'm maybe a little bit more fresh than some of these more experienced players with it, are going to get stomped by those players who have, their Terapagos matchups figured out.
Yeah. I think one of the other things is the specs variants. Like we saw a lot of rapid development with the specs teams, which is really great to see. But I think Aurelion came pretty close to the peak with where Specs Terapagos can come. And I think what we saw is that the format, like the way that those Specs teams run, it's relatively linear. It honestly feels more like a matchup check, the
Yeah.
Specs Terapagos, where you practice against it, you know you're lying into it, and like if you get got by it, then something went wrong with your planning, or like you got crit or something. But I'm not going to say it's like the Dondozo of Regulation G, but it's like that, or size spam, but it's at least like that idea where if you practice against it, you know you're lying into it, the game's probably going to go the exact way you think it should go, and
Hmm.
as long as the line's good, you're good. As for the Calm Mind variants, it's too slow. It takes a while for you to get your damage up, and like one of the things that could really, really hurt is like any team with Fergraph where you can't start fake out spamming. Again, I had a matchup. I think it was local. I went to in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, and I was up against a setup Terapagos player, and I pretty much forced him into a situation where he had to early Terra to try to just get some damage on the board because after like two or three turns, he wasn't really doing anything. And the second he early Terra, I'm like, okay, well, Urshifu comes in and Oko's you now because I have a bit of chip on you and you just lost your Terra Shell.
Yeah.
Um, it's it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. It's a little once you get going, oh my god, it's so fun. But until you do get going, you can get got real easy because all of these other Pokemon with the unfair $90 buttons, they can click their button immediately, and you gotta wait to. You either have to lock into that button completely, or you gotta wait two or three turns to be able to click the button.
Yeah, and there's also just so much priority in the format, just generally. So, like, sometimes you don't even have an ability. That Terra Shell can be very easily taken from you with an extreme speed, a fake out, a
Sucker
grassy
Punch,
glide, a soccer punch. You
Thunderclap.
know, there's In terms of these teams that we're looking at here, there's only one Pokemon with priority blocking, which is Indeedee. The rest of these teams are kind of just, I'm going to leave it to the, however it goes. Speed control is great with Tornadus, but it doesn't stop Sucker Punch or Grassy Glide or Fake Out or Extreme Speed. Um, so I think that is another issue, and I think that's why we don't see choice specs that much, is because Fake Out is such an issue for those choice specs teams.
Yeah, I really do think you have to figure out a way to be able to run Terapagos on a team with Fergaraf. It's just that you're already it's already, at least at the start, unless you're running it with the specs at the start, it is such a passive Pokemon that adding another supporty Pokemon that, outside of providing the fake outs, like the fake out immunity, really doesn't synergize all too much outside of that with Terapagos. Like, sure, you can click Trick Room to provide speed control, you can click Helping Hand, but outside of that, it's not doing much more.
Mhm.
And that's like the other thing where, like, this on the thinnest of papers, this Pokemon fits with Fergraph, and then when you actually like start testing it, getting into it, you're like, oh, it's kind of like one spot's doing nothing and the other spot's trying to do everything, and it can't do everything immediately, which is a little rough. The final Gen 9 Pokemon, final Gen 9 restricted, Koraidon, which I think kind of rounds out, like, this Pokemon like rounds out like the top 7 or so, where it's like anything we discuss after this, like there might be like, I'd say really anything after this mon after Koraidon that we discuss isn't like, it could win by if a really really strong player uses it, but in general, like I'd say like this is like the cutoff of put your money on this Pokemon. Everything else, it's just super high odds, and even for Koraidon, it's super high odds.
It's even a little weird saying it for Koraidon. I was gonna say, like, this
Yeah,
Pokemon really has not had fantastic results, uh, really throughout the entirety of Regulation G. Um,
Regage
the one thing that it
or
doesn't have that
Reggie.
all these, whatever, no, Reg H is the next one.
Yeah, I know. I messed up myself. It's Reg G. I was the one who
I
messed up.
was correct. Don't
You were
don't try to
correct.
correct me when I'm right.
No, I'm
All
sorry.
right. Um, like, yeah, the issue with Koraidon that it doesn't have when a lot of these other Pokemon have is that it does not have a strong spread move. It has basically, it might have Bulldoze, it might have Earthquake, but it doesn't have anything that's going to be consistent. It's nothing that you're going to actually run on it, and it is so Terra dependent. There's a lot of matchups with these other restricted Pokemon that they don't have to Terra. You can use it on something else. But with Koraidon, any incidental fairy coverage, whether it's a Calric Shadow, whether it's a Flutter Mane, whether it's Comfair, whatever random fairy types are running around, you're going to get got by. You have to Terra Fire in front of that. And then what are you doing? Pelipper is going to knock you out with a Weather Ball at that point. Like, if you're getting KO'd by Pelipper, then you might want to rethink your life.
Yeah, I think if we had to say like why does Koraidon win, it's because its ability sets up Fluttermane and Raging Bolt really really well, and Fluttermane and Raging Bolt are really 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 powerful Pokemon. Raging Bolt might as well be a second restricted in the grand
Yeah.
scheme of things,
It
and
has the same stats as Lunala, just about. So,
yeah. So like having a Pokemon that you can just pretty much slap on and say, hey, like you're here, not like you're afraid of the restricted, you're looking at the wrong mon, this is the actual restricted. And like that's what's good. Like why could it win? Fluttermane gets a speed boost or a special attack boost and just blows through everything. And there's like, especially in some of these more offensive Raging Bolt builds, like the Terra Electric Protosynthesis boosted Thunderclaps, like that's, we're talking E Speed D Knight with Chien Pao, like levels of damage output with the priority there. Like you're
yeah.
able to pretty much threaten everything in the game that doesn't resist it with a very, very massive chunk of damage, and if they're chipped, see you later. Jay also just pretty much kind of covered why it's not going to win. I'm just going to pull up the damage calc real quick.
Yeah,
Uh,
while you do, I'll give my reasons why it won't win. Uh, Chien Pao and the exact Pokemon that you want to pair with it.
yep, it
Uh,
loses to Fluttermane.
and it does not like seeing Raging Bolt because most of the time you're running Collision Course and two fire moves.
Yeah,
Like you don't hit Raging Bolt for too much damage, and if we're starting to look towards defensive Terras, like defensive Terra Fairy, it becomes a little awkward.
yeah.
Uh,
The fact that you have the ability to set Sun and you have to Terra to get stab on that bonus to the fire type moves that get boosted
yeah,
by the sun. That really hurts. The calc I was looking at, a 36 special attacking vest Comfey, which is just the standard that they throw into the Nerd of Now calculator, does 56.8 to 70.4% into the Koraidon. So yes, even the little baby flower like support Pokemon is wrecking your shit.
yeah, and the Pokemon that probably gets more shit than any other Pokemon on this entire channel just is a one-stop shop for stopping this thing. Shout out to Pelipper for the Koraidon matchup. Like, what are you doing into Pelipper? Absolutely nothing.
Yeah,
Like,
and especially because they're going to be your odds are with the Koraidon, it's going to be Terrafire, so you're going to Terra from one weakness into the other. You can't hit it; it resists your
yeah,
moves. Like and I think that's the other thing. Like why it can lose the fact that Koraidon gets like absolutely stomped by a regional bird from Generation 3, and it's like there's nothing it can do into it. Like you're really, really leaning on the rock pond that comes with it to be able to get in that Ivy Cudgel, getting your Raging Bolt in proper position to punish the Pelipper. Like you really need your other Mons to punish the Pelipper, and if that's the case, you're letting your opponent's restricted next to the Pelipper do whatever it wants, and and you just don't want to do that. You don't want to be in that position.
yeah. These Koraidon teams feel much more like Raging Bolt teams than anything else.
Yeah,
Um,
which
you know,
Raging Bolt's amazing, and I can't see a world where, again, in GS Cup, one of the cool things that Koraidon can be is it could be a sun. It is a sun setter that isn't weak to water. So it could work on teams that maybe have a bad Kyogre matchup where like this is one of the few Pokemon you actually can't switch in to a full HP water spout. You naturally resist the water spout with your dragon typing and you're setting the sun to boot to not only minimize they lose the rain boost, but they also get the sun like nerf.
yeah,
So like again, this time next year when we're talking GS Cup, probably I think it'll be a Pokemon duo that we could say, oh, we could see this winning. As of right now, the Derpy Wet Bird beats you, and that's bad.
yeah. You also completely cut yourself out from using Urshifu Rapid Strike, which is just one of the most broken Pokemon in the format.
No,
You
no,
know
you
how?
just cut it off. Just one of the most broken Pokemon.
Yeah,
Whoever invented Urshifu, you need therapy, and by therapy I mean there's a nice padded cell in Guantanamo for you, buddy.
we're gonna put you in isolation after you created a Pokemon with a always critting Water type move or Dark type move for that matter. That can go through Protect. Which, speaking of, I just watched Wolfie's recent video about Orlando regionals. Um, I'm gonna say it. I've said it once. I've said it a million times. Neil completely sold by clicking close combat in that last game because
Yep,
Mystic Water, Surging Strikes always does more than close combat.
yep.
Always. It's like the max roll for close combat is the min roll for Surging Strikes. Don't know what crack they're smoking, but it's okay. That's why trans lives are winning out here.
Yep,
Okay,
absolutely. Trans
that's why
lives matter.
our trans homies are catching W's 24/7. Shout out Mungus.
I think like there's like I'd say like Zacian's like I will like to the last one.
Fringe,
This is
fringe,
like
but
fringe. I also do know someone who I believe is going to be running Zacian, and
good
they've
luck to
been
them.
playing nothing but Zacian for the last two. I'd say like since NAIC ended, they found a Zacian team, and it's been great for them. And again, rooting for the player big time. Um, Zacian, it's like a more offensive Zamazenta. Like the fairy type coverage is really great for Zacian. With the Miraidon there, you have like these um, dragon types that are up and about. It's just that play rough misses, and you really get cycled hard
Yeah,
by
your Incineroar
Incineroar.
matchup is abysmal. You can't just switch out like you used to, because if you
Yeah,
switch out, you're going to end up at the same spot you were before, because Intrepid Sword doesn't work like that. So a lot of these teams opt for like Sword Stand Station, and then you're missing out on your Sacred Swords, which also is a big miss for it. Now you don't hit Chiampawas consistently, you don't hit Incineroar consistently at all. Um,
yeah, and you could
how the
see like
mighty have fallen.
yeah, and you could see here like you're able to run. It's another Pokemon that it's not the dishonest Pokemon it was in Generation 8. It's very very honest now, and you're but on the plus side you are able to run a lot of really powerful Pokemon with it. The top team, Pure at VGC at the Boot Camp Reg G Welcome Tournament, using Waterfoo, um, Fluttermane, Rilla. We've seen a few cases of it being ran with a Tailwind Setter and Regidrago. Regidrago being a really, really powerful dragon type, completing the fantasy core with just the Zacian and the Drago. Um,
Yeah.
Being able to put out a lot of special damage, a lot of spread damage. For a team that isn't checked, it can do really, really well. Like, again, we've seen this in a few places, and I do believe if we do see Zacian do well, I think it will be paired with the Regidrago. It's just a super cool Pokemon that can do a lot.
How good
Um,
would Drago be in Regulation Age?
oh my god, it'll be amazing. Actually, bringing with you bring up Regulation Age before we got on the Urshifu rant, like I think it just goes to show how absolutely busted and just suppressive a Pokemon is. That just by removing Urshifu from the metagame, the number of just good water type Pokemon that have been popping up, like Basculegion, Palafin, like all these different Pokemon.
Dozo's back. Pelipper is
Um,
just like all over the place.
yeah, well, I mean, Pelipper's been all over the place, but it's
But it's
staying, it's
look to our
staying.
left right now. You can see he's number 4 in terms
Yep.
of usage for lab mass over there. Like,
Yeah, like you have the
um,
Palafin here, like again, Basculegion, Prim, like that's just Urshifu is just so suppressive because the second that we get Red G back in January, all of these fun water types that we'll get to use for the next like 3 or so months,
see you later.
gone. Just put
I'm
them back in
I'm
the
gonna
bin.
crit my moves and hit you 3 times and break any sashes that are there as well. So
Yeah, right through the protect. Getting back to the Zacian, why I think it could win is it can just be ran with good Pokemon, and if you do get it in position, it can run through teams.
yeah,
Why it's going to lose, it's so tough to get in position, and it's just the pacing of the format just isn't there for it. There's too like they did a good job nerfing Zacian. Um, I wish they also handled the horses and Urshifu, but they did a really good job at nerfing the problem Pokemon from generation one of the problem Pokemon from Generation 8.
yeah, and fire types.
Oh yeah,
We're
yeah,
lucky
fire
that
types.
our best fire types are fire dark, so your play rough is at least still hitting neutrally. But we saw, can't remember what tournament it was exactly, but I believe Zacian got 3rd place over there in that tournament. It came across a Terrafire Calyrex Ice, and it had, even at +4, it was only able to do 25% because Behemoth Blade and Play Rough don't hit fire types
Nope.
for even neutral damage. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, it's rough. So yeah, that's I'd say the rest are just fun mons like Lunala, fun mon, Dawn Wings on the hard trick room teams. Your name's Tom Hayden if you're running that. Um,
Yeah, go Tom Hayden.
yeah.
That's my pick for Worlds is Tom Hayden.
Tom Hayden. He's not even going to Worlds.
That's okay. I'm still picking Tom Hayden.
That's great. With that being said, we'll actually go into some of our actual, like our final things. Is the Um, our restricted pick for Worlds. So as you could tell, Carter's not here. He was at a Magic tournament today because he does things that aren't just Pokemon. Carter went and said he thinks Calyrex Ice is going to win.
Yeah, I
Um,
love how you're talking about that. I've played Pokemon in the past like 4 months.
yeah, but you're here.
I am here. That is the only Pokemon
Yeah,
connection that I have, is that I have to be here on Sundays. Uh,
it's our week.
Otherwise, I'm
It's
doing
our weekly therapy.
whatever else I feel like.
Yeah, so Carter's picking Cali I. Carl said Miraidon. I'm also thinking Miraidon. I've noticed from some Japanese tours, a lot of the Japanese players are sticking with Miraidon. Of course, Joe UX9 has been killing it with his Miraidon team. So I'm that's where I'm leaning as well. Um,
I have also been thinking a lot about Miraidon. I know Justin Knox posted today about his potential team that he was thinking about playing if the format was a couple weeks ago, where he was running like Koraidon Psy Spam, but he was like, oh, the
yep.
Miraidon teams have advanced to a point, so I know that they're very meta defining. I'm going to go Calyrex Shadow to
Okay.
be different, but also to kind of go back to what I've been saying all year is once you think Calyrex Shadow is not in the format anymore, it's going to come back and it's going to kick your butt. And
Win.
I'm not going to say that it's not in the format right now because it is, but it hasn't won in a little bit. Um, I think it might be the Pokemon to watch right now.
Yeah. So with that being said, I know just a little update before we let Jay get out. Next week, because the tournament is in Hawaii, it starts, I believe, like the stream kicks off at 2 p.m. local for Jay and I, which means that we probably won't actually start getting to games till 3 p.m. local. So next week, we're probably going, you might not see us next Monday on in your feeds because we'll probably be recording on Monday because finals will probably be like being played when it would be like 1 in the morning for us, depending on how it
Yeah, like
goes.
midnight, even after.
Yeah,
I love
like
how you said before we let Jay get out of here. Like that was messed up. All
what do you
right,
mean it's messed up? I'm saying like
throw
like
throw
like
all the onus on me for getting out of here.
you're the one. I'm as in like you're going to do the outro.
Okay, okay,
Yeah,
fine.
so
Good point.
work your magic, buddy.
Yeah, we will not be missing next week, so don't you dare even consider that idea because we've been 232 weeks now straight of being in your feeds
Yep.
on Mondays. Just know that we're going to be 24 hours late next week
Mm-hmm.
because of that. We're East Coasters. Hawaii is not even Pacific time. It's
It's
even
its own time.
further. It's got its own time. So I wanted to say before we get out of here, good luck to both Ibrahim and Foiled Feline, two of my closest friends in the Pokemon community. They're both going to Worlds. Really hoping that they pull out some great results. And with that, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Tell us what restricted you think is going to win. Um, Come and join the community Discord where we talk about the non-restricteds that are probably going to win, like Urshifu and Incineroar. Yeah, don't be surprised if we say those Pokemon won next week, because I don't think any of us will be. Follow us on Twitter at LR Lessons. We have tons of fun stuff on the channel right now between Inkay Games and Littleroot Record. So come check that out. And also, check out the Patreon and Discord community links as well to try and support us, keep our lights on. As you can see, my room is dark because I don't have any money from any of you guys. Uh, and thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you all next week for our World's review after the preview. Peace
Yep.
out.
Bye, everyone. Go New England.